Hello, good day. I hope you are having a wonderful day today. So this is part 2 of my video of my experience in leaving Seventh-day Adventism and embracing the gospel. I know some of you are long awaiting my part 2. Now, I've been attempting to make this video several times, but I'm trying to control the length as much as possible, so I had to do over back the video several times. I have not gotten the right sync yet, you know, in making videos, so please bear with me. We have a saying that everything is first hard before it becomes easy. I'm a newbie in this, so just bear with me, please. So as I continue my tale of leaving Adventism, if you had heard the last part of the video, I made mention that I was introduced to an anti-Trinitarian teaching that is fast growing in the Adventist church. It's early teaching that is very much a semi-Arian view, which Adventists call the Father-Son movement, or which those persons of that within that group, they call it the Father-Son movement, which is causing somewhat of a division right now in the Seventh-day Adventist church. And I had made mention of a friend of mine introduced these teachings to me and how I had absorbed this teaching. I had absorbed it because at the time, in my mind, Ellen White, I held her as a true prophet of God, right? And as such, I could not reconcile how, because the rationale with this movement is that God gave Ellen White the truth, right? God gave Ellen White the truth in its early days, and the church had backslidden from the truth and now accept the pagan Trinitarian doctrine. Now, if I may quickly add, one of the marks of these counterfeit Christian churches, as I says, I'm trying to refrain from using cult. One of these marks of these new religious movements, counterfeit churches, is that each of them has a problem with the Trinity, right? And I'm going to show the devastating effects of the denial of that doctrine in future video. So now they're saying the rationale behind it, but behind these persons in Adventism, is that Ellen White had the truth from the get-go, and she had not transitioned to Trinity, but rather the church has been misinterpreting some of her teaching, thinking that she's saying, hey, God is a Trinity. So that is the rationale behind it. However, Seventh-day Adventism, when they had embraced the doctrine of the Trinity, it first started after Ellen White's death, sometime about 1930 or 1931. Little by little, the teachings on the Trinity began to change until it became an official doctrine of the church in either 1980 or 1981, one of those dates, right? So I, at the time, believing wholeheartedly that she's a true prophet, I couldn't reconcile in my mind how could God have told her that, hey, he's not a Trinity, and then years after tell her that, hey, I'm a triune God. I couldn't rationalize it in my mind. How could God say this is black and then later say this is silver? It seemed like a contradiction to me, right? So there were only two options for me. Either I'm going to believe, because God cannot contradict himself. You understand? So either Ellen White was never called by God to begin with, or the church had really backslidden. And unfortunately, I believe the latter, that the church had backslidden. And so I from there, I believed the doctrine, and I began to share it to different persons whom I know is an Adventist, telling them that, hey, Ellen White never believed the doctrine of the Trinity, etc., etc. Right? And I got discovered. I got discovered by my pastors, and I was called by them to have a talk. One of my pastors called me to have a talk with me, saying that he hears that I'm sharing things that I should not be sharing to persons. Right? Now, at that time, as I believe I made mention that I was going to a different Adventist church when I just started in it, but I changed to another one. So this church that I'm going now, which is Portmore Seventh-day Adventist, right? I was called by one of the pastors at that time to call to have a word. He wanted to have a word with me. Now, that church has 3 pastors. You know, Adventists, they change pastors regularly. So I don't know if these pastors are there now, but at the time there were 3 pastors. One among them was a conference president, right? 2 pastors are there, one that is downstairs and one that is upstairs, that is in charge of a deaf church that is held upstairs, and one downstairs. So I went in the pastor's vestry to talk to the 3 of them, not before talking to the first elder, however, and received somewhat like a warning or some caution or scolding or something of that sort from him. Then I went there and I was speaking to the 3 of them, and to my surprise, the talk did not go as smooth as I had expected. Now, what happened in speaking to them, I felt as though they were trying to control the conversation, as though I'm the one who's there wanting to ask the questions and so forth, and it's like they're trying to control whatever questions I ask, or they try to divert and go to something else. They're not. It's like they were unwilling to answer my question up front, give me straightforward answers. They want to answer me what they feel like to answer. Not only that, I felt a spirit of intolerance, a spirit of impatience coming from them, as though they are annoyed. And on top of that, I was called a heretic by one of the pastors. Something that kind of caught me at the time, being called a heretic. Because I'm there seeking answers, right? And fortunately, I know now that doctrine is a false doctrine. But at that time, it was their false prophet that and her teaching caused me to be ensnared in that doctrine. And for the record, Seventh-day Adventist ministers, they know that Ellen White, they know all the dirt behind Ellen White and that the teachings are flawed. But for the sake of money, and to keep the organization together, they rather choose to hush up about it and continue to spread their thing nonetheless. But even so, they know that she is a false prophet, and they know that I'm one who was led captive by her writings. Instead of showing some compassion, I was shown something else, right? And what I was told is that what I should do is read the 28 fundamental beliefs. I was pointed, one of them took up a book that they had, 28 fundamental beliefs, asked me if I had one. I said yes, I have one, and they said to me that read that. As long as I read that, everything will be fine, will be okay. And after they had said that, one of them said to me that they see many guys like me going down this path, and what happened to them, they don't hear from them, they vanish as if out of existence or something like that. So it was more like a means to discourage me from making any further steps or any going about with anything that they think I may have planned in my mind, right? And then he said to me that he's hoping that I don't think that they are trying to hide anything from me like that, but they're more trying to caution me on the path that I'm seen to be going on. But it's almost as if he read my mind, because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking that, yeah, it seems to me like they have something hiding. Now, having said, after he had said their last words to me, I was then dismissed. So I left the office and I went home. I was talking to persons whom I was close with in the church, telling them how the talk went, and I tell them that I never liked how it went because I never felt the Spirit of God in that room. You understand? And after that, about the day after or so, I was removed from a group that I was in, and several groups I've been removed from before. And that group is the conservation committee group. Now I was one of them who in the conservation committee group, in charge of nurturing new converts and so forth, right? I suppose they removed me because they thought I'm a danger. I might be a danger to the new converts. So I just see the leader for the group message me and say, Pastor said to remove you from the group, and then with that they removed me from the group. Now that hurts. Now let me tell you that hurt extremely. I'm telling you, when that happened, I was removed, and since then my relationship with them just changed. When I say change, it's almost as if when I'm talking to them, it's like they're not into me, or I suddenly become this evil person, right? That was what my relationship was like with them. Those whom I was close with, one of them told me that I can't be trusted, and one of them mentioning about me being deceived by the devil and several stuff. These were persons whom I was close with, and I'm telling you, hearing that from persons who I think I have a relationship with, it really hurts. One of them whom I was trying to talk with, right, before WhatsApp was upgraded, they sent a message, it's like they were forwarding a message, and the message went to me by accident, and what that message was saying was not anything good. To this day, that individual, she can't look me in my eye and speak to me calmly because of the guilt. In Jamaican terminology, let me say, basically, chat me. Or if you're not a Jamaican, let me use something that you can more understand. Backbiting. Yeah, you understand? That was what was going on, and these were persons whom I sat committees with. Instead of trying to hear where I'm coming from and trying to understand my perspective, this was the treatment that I got from them. So eventually I started coming to church less and less. Church began to become to me as it's like hell. I started to lose interest in church because the hurt is still there. I'm feeling the disconnection and so forth, and despite the fact that I went to elders, deacons and pastors, and I was told that they're going to have a word with me soon, I and them going to talk, and I begged and besieged, nothing. It's almost as if they are conning me. You understand? I don't know if they formed some committee and talk about Kismar and said that be careful of that young man, and maybe they tell him to keep away from him or something like that. But no one wanted to talk to me or anything. As a matter of fact, one day when I was not at church, I was told by someone whom at that time I had rapport with that I should lay low from church because an announcement was made that there are certain individuals in the church speaking this, etc., talking things that they're not supposed to be talking, and if they want to know, they should come to the vestry and they will tell them who those individuals are, and I'm supposing that I am one of them, right? Having said that, feeling the hurt and everything, right, I began to still share. I thought that they know that they are wrong, since as they are being so detached from me. They know that they are wrong on the Trinity, and so thinking I'm doing a good thing, I began to share it with persons, and having shared it till I reached a point where I'm satisfied, I said to myself that okay, now I have to examine other doctrines, because it is very much possible that there are other doctrines, that other changes that I'm not aware of. And by the way, the doctrines of these new religious movements are counterfeits. You'll realize that they are changed very often, right? And so it is with even Adventist fundamental beliefs. It's modified often as well. Despite they say that they are the true church and God call them, they seem to be in error ever so often, that their teachings has to change. And this is something worth noting. So, having said that, before I was about to look into several of my doctrines and so forth, there was this one individual whom I had done Bible work with, whom I heard that they had left Adventism, right? And I worked with that person, and I heard that she had left, she and her husband. And I wanted to talk to them personally, because I figured they were being mistreated. They go through the same stuff that I did. So knowing how that felt, I said to myself that I'm going to hear them out as to why they leave the church, that they abandoned Sabbath and so forth. So I went and talked with the both of them, right? And I noticed that some bad energy coming from especially the husband at the time, as though he is angry and so forth, some bad attitude and things. And I started to talk to him, and we're discussing about Sabbath, and he's telling me, as a matter of fact, he has uploaded his video to today, and he was saying how his experience, how he left, what caused him to that. A voice told him that he doesn't need to keep Sabbath anymore. And I was like, honestly bro, I don't think that voice was coming from God. I more think that it's actually coming from the devil. You'll hear him mention it in his video, that was some of the comments that he got from persons, and I am one of those individuals that he got that from. So we're talking about the Sabbath, and he's telling me like how to study the Bible, and as I begin to post my text about how the Sabbath to keep, he's telling me, no, Kismo, you cannot study the Bible like that. You're taking it out of context and so forth. Right? He got annoyed at everything and wanted to just stop. So I said, okay then, alright then, I'll stop. Let's just stop this. And I told him that even though they made their decision on Adventism, I still love them just the same. I don't condemn them or anything, even though I don't believe them. But I wish them all the best. Now, having said that, sometime a friend of mine again sent me a link on Adventist, inquiring about some stuff that they got on social media. It was a link. I don't know how the person got the link, and they were saying to me that please give me your honest opinion on what this link is saying, right? And I checked the link. And when I looked at the link, it was something coming from Dale Ratzlaff, a former Adventist. If you're interested, you can check out his ministry. He has a ministry that is called, I'll post the name of the ministry below in the description. And I was checking out the link, right? Because to give the honest response to the person who sent it to me. And when I looked at the link, I was completely blown away at what I was seeing. Huge amount of contradictions I'm seeing lined up with the Bible, and things come from Ellen White. And not only that, I saw a huge amount of failed prophecies, right? False prophecies that didn't come true, right? And I was just blown away at what I was seeing. And being an honest Christian, I had to admit to the individual that yes, these are contradictions. And from then on, I said to myself, oh my, have I really been following a false prophet? And if she's a false prophet, what does this mean? What is this church that I'm in if this church is being led by a false prophet? So right then and there, before I said I do anything, I said I'm going to have to look again and examine the teachings of Adventism. And this time not with the help of their literature, not with the help of Ellen White. Since I became an Ellen White believer, I read Ellen White along with the Bible. That is how most Adventists do it. So this time I said I'm going to study it, and I'm going to leave Ellen White writings, leave Adventist literature, and study some of their doctrines. Now, having said that, right, in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 18 verse 20 to 22, you can look at that at your own leisure. I'm not going to read it, but it tells you that a prophet must, whatever a prophet says, it must come true, and that is the determining factor of whether that prophet is a true prophet or not. Right? So once I saw that, I realized that immediately Ellen White can't stand in my mind anymore as a true prophet, and the doctrines now need to be examined. Right? But there is something interesting that I'd like to note, because normally as an Adventist or a person involved in a new religious or counterfeit Christianity, right? Oh, forgive me. Our cults. The thing is that they oftentimes tend to be close-minded. And as a matter of fact, let me read something just to back up what I'm saying from a book, Kingdom of the Cults, written by Dr. Walter Martin, one of Christendom's most noted and respected apologetics to cults. He made note of this in his book, Kingdom of the Cults. I believe it's chapter 3. He says, first and foremost, the belief systems of the cults are characterized by close-mindedness. They are not interested in a rational cognitive evaluation of the facts. The organizational structure interprets the facts to the cultists, generally invoking the Bible and or its respective founder as the ultimate source of its pronouncements. Such belief systems are in isolation. They never shift to logical consistency. They exist in what we might describe as separate compartments in the cultist's mind, and are almost incapable of penetration or disruption if the individual cultist is completely committed to the authority pattern of its organization. Now, I had to bring out this point because I was shown things regarding Adventism before, and I totally dismissed it. A person on Facebook before saying things to me saying that Adventist is a cult, and I instantly blocked that individual. Person said to me a lot of times, telling me about why I do this, what about the Sabbath, and trying to counsel me, but I wouldn't listen. You understand? But had it not been for how I've been treated by my pastors and members, it broke the close-mindedness from me and gave me an open mind. Because I'm saying, if I'm going to be treated like this, then there really is things that are being hidden. And it caused me to be open-minded, because naturally I might not have even chosen to look at that link that the individual sent to me. So I thank God for how they treated me. You understand? Even though it hurts, I thank God for how they treated me. So now, saying now that I'm going to go through their doctrines, I was so fortunate to have been taught a principle of study by one of my Adventist colleagues, and what he told me is that I should, whenever I'm studying a subject, I should gather the passages of text that speak on that subject, gather all of them using a word search, and study all of them. So like for instance, if I'm studying Sabbath, I would gather all the texts that speak about Sabbath, and then study it and see what I can get from it. What he does, he did not tell me, however, while that principle is good, is what methodology to use. Because Adventism, he did state he never state what methodology to use. Because Adventist methodology that they use is called proof texting. Right? It's called proof texting. Now, what proof texting is, you can do your own research on that. There are different methods of study, one of which is exegesis and biblical hermeneutics, and you have eisegesis and proof texting. Eisegesis and proof texting are discredited from almost nearly almost all theological school. I believe I don't know any of them who endorse eisegesis and proof texting. Neither do any scholar endorse eisegesis and proof texting. Right? No scholar. All of them will tell you exegesis and hermeneutics is the way to study, the Bible. Right? But Adventists did not teach me these principles of study, exegesis and hermeneutics. However, the former Adventist friend whom I had talked with before, who left and abandoned Sabbath and so forth, she asked me one day if I've ever heard of exegesis and biblical hermeneutics, and I told her no a long time, and I told her no. Right? She showed me what it is, because she went at NCU along with her husband, who I told you that uploaded a video today, and she showed me the contrast of proof text and eisegesis. Right? And seeing the contrast and seeing how bad proof texting and eisegesis is, I began to wonder to myself, why do Adventists study the Bible this way? And why am I using this principle of study? Right? Now, having said that, I said to myself that, hey, I'm gonna have to use a different methodology in this study. And having said that, I began my study, and the first doctrine that I looked at was their core doctrine, that is called investigative judgments and the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary. Right? Now, there's a good history line on how Adventists came to believe this doctrine. For the purpose of this video, to keep it short, I'm not going to say how they come to believe this doctrine. I'll do that in upcoming video. Right? But the whole basis of the doctrine comes from Daniel chapter 8, 8 verse 14, wherein it says, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Right? Now, most persons, most scholars in the world, I don't know any outside of Adventists, that interprets the sanctuary mentioned in Daniel 8 verse 14 to mean a heavenly sanctuary. Right? All of them will tell you that it's an earthly sanctuary. Now, when this doctrine was first taught and believed on by a man named William Miller, as I say in my next video, I'll explain more. He interpreted it to be a earthly sanctuary, and that God is going to cleanse the earth by fire. Right? And so, voila, second coming of Christ, and he set his date 1843, switched it to 1844. They all failed. Right? And out of that aftermath, a doctrine was created from it in Adventism called investigative judgment and the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary, wherein Daniel chapter 8 is now reinterpreted, and the sanctuary that was first seen as an earthly one was now said to be a heavenly one. And it was further said that Christ is doing a specific work in the heavenly sanctuary. Right? And that gave Adventists its identity. It gave Ellen White her stamp of it gave Ellen White her authority as the prophet of the church, since she endorsed that doctrine by visions that she claimed that she got from God. Right? So she began to be known as a prophet, and she endorsed that doctrine. Along with that doctrine, they are said to have a specific message, that is to launch the three-angel message of Revelation 14, sorry. Right? One of which is to tell persons that they need to keep the 10 commandments, one of which is the Sabbath. Right? And this gave Adventists its mission and identity. And from this core doctrine, investigative judgment and the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary, several doctrines, most of their doctrines are connected. Most of their doctrines are connected to it. Right? Most of their doctrines are connected to that one doctrine. So now, having said that, I said I'm going to study Daniel 8 the entire chapter of Daniel 8. As I've told how to study the Bible using exegesis, it demands something like that. But proof texting doesn't. Proof texting will just slice out pieces and just leave the rest. That is proof texting. Right? And in all my time being in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I've never seen the entire passage taught, an exposition done wherein each text is being explained contextually. I've only seen verse 14 quoted and left just like that. So now that I'm employing this new method of study and I'm now looking at it piece by piece, by the time I identify the sanctuary in verse 13, which seems like an earthly one contextually, and by the time I see other texts, the text is the text before contextually, I'm saying when I reach verse 14, the question that is asked in verse 13, a question is asked regarding the sanctuary, and this sanctuary is an earthly sanctuary, right? Based on the context. How does verse 14 it transition to a heavenly sanctuary? And for the first time, believing this doctrine, I'm beginning to see the problem there is. And that was when I was like, man, I've been tricked. I've been played for a sucker. That was when I realized that this church, this system is a false system, because it doesn't matter what I do, I couldn't reconcile how they get an investigative judgment, cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary, now using this new principle of study. From there, I studied other doctrines, and there was a time when I was on my bed that I wept bitterly. One time I jumped for joy at the truth that I began to discover, which I will mention in further videos. I jumped for joy, and at another time I wept bitterly, realizing the decision that I made in joining Adventism, what it cost me, how I suffered, the things that happened to me with the brethren and so forth, the relationships that I lost, having left Adventism. I wept bitterly. Right? I wept bitterly when I realized all these things. Now, I must say that there was one doctrine that I still grappled with before I left, and that was the Sabbath.